Welcome to Soul Nutrition, where we discuss the various ways of nourishing our souls. I'm your host, Reina Rose. I'm so excited to have my guest here with you today, the author of Worst Case Scenario, Best Life Ever, Stories of Hope and Healing from a World in Chaos. Layla Groleau is a national board-certified English teacher, author, and speaker. She co-authored Parents' College Survival Guide, Planning and Paying for College. As a wife, mother of 4, and grandmother of 5, she relishes her time with people, big and small. Contributing purposefully to the world around her, she enjoys serving in her church community, creating and visiting beautiful gardens, traveling, and connecting to people of many backgrounds. Layla, it's such an honor to have you on the show today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, Reina. Thanks.
So I'm really interested to find out about your motivation behind this book, because obviously you were writing it long before this time of COVID that we're in right now, where we're literally experiencing almost a dystopian version of the worst case scenario. And yet many people are still living their best lives ever. Tell me, when did you start writing this book and what was the motivation behind it?
Well, it was a surprise to me. So I really feel it was spirit inspired. And actually, Reina, it did begin in the beginning of this crazy COVID pandemic, but then it expanded way past just pandemic. So it was in March of last year. I'm a teacher. Everyone kind of remembers what was going on March 13th or March 15th, and everyone got sent home. And the beginning of that experience was very interesting. It was, oh, I get to clean my whole house and reorganize and, projects I was kind of checking off. And then it was like, oh, wait, this is going to be longer than 2 weeks. And, everybody's lives kind of changed and switched. And for me and for many people, there was a sense of real isolation from your workmates, your friends, your family members. It was very surreal, and it became difficult. It became difficult for a lot of people. As the difficulties became very pronounced from friends and family and on the news, and pretty much that's all we heard about, I started noticing really right away what people were doing to uplift each other, and how it was this surprise, crazy scenario, yet people were doing all these amazing things to lift up each other, to help each other, to use their gifts and talents. I was absolutely inspired. And I thought, I've got to write this stuff down. I need to be a little historian here. But it was more than just, oh, here's what I know is going to be a very particular moment in history. Let's record some stories. It was actually quite a bit deeper than that. I just thought, I wonder if everyone recognizes the goodness that's going on right now. And I think that is very important. Not just that cool things happened and people did all these beautiful things, but why did they do those things? And how did that impact individuals in society? There's just been an incredible ripple effect of goodness. And then beyond that, okay, well, what about when it's over? Do we just have these quaint little kind of sentimental stories to tell, or is there more? Is there a takeaway? Have we changed as individuals? Have we noticed things? Have we grown? Have we deepened ourselves? So, kind of a nutshell, but a lot of those things were running through my mind in April. And I thought, you know what, I'll take some stories for a few weeks. And it ended up, I I knew of people, I've heard of people, people would send me notes on Facebook, or I'd see people in the news, or I'd read about them in the paper, and I'd try to get in contact with them. I interviewed over 20 individuals all spring and all summer and even into the fall. And many of them had absolutely nothing to do with the pandemic. They were just experiencing some real challenges in their own life or in their community, and they were doing extraordinary things with their time and their energy. So anyway, that's how it started. It was quite a surprise to me. I did not plan on writing a book this spring and summer, but it was put on my heart. So I'm like, okay, we're gonna do it, God, you and me.
Wow. And not only did you answer the call, but you answered the call so incredibly quickly. I mean, we're still in the midst of what didn't turn out to be a 2-week pandemic. And your book is, you've done the interviews, you've done the editing and published it all within the time. So kudos to you for answering the call really quickly. And also how incredible, you know, unfortunately, these days when we watch the news, all we see is all the terrible events that are happening during this time, all of the horrible things, right? And of course, your book still records maybe horrible things that happened, but incredible responses to those things. And that's the side that, you know, the salacious news lines that sell aren't showing the incredible response to, yes, horrible things happen. And however, the best things can come out of them. And even one of the things that I write about a lot as well is, you know, sometimes it's those really tough things that bring the best out of us that wasn't even there before. I talk about, you know, before my brother died, I really lacked empathy, right? Because I had never, you know, been able to dig below the surface of like positive mantras and, you know, because we can't go down here because that could be hurtful. So, you know, but once my brother died and that was all broken, then I was able to mourn with those who mourn and be in that empathy state of giving back, whether someone's in the perfect happy state or a really challenging time. And is that something that, you know, one thing I realized too during the grieving process, some people just didn't know what to do with grief, right? I lost a lot of weight because I just couldn't even smell food, let alone eat food for about a month. And, you know, people who had never been through grief would say, oh, well, at least you got to lose some weight. You know, you lost your best friend and brother, but, you know, you lost some weight. And they just didn't know how to be with someone in grief. Is that something that as you read through your book, you can feel, of course, what happens before the incredible response and maybe know a little bit better both the grief side of loss and worst case scenario, as well as the response of not just putting on a happy face, but really being there for someone?
Absolutely, Reina. When we think back to, some of the most powerful movies or books or historical fiction or documentaries, often they take place during the most harrowing times of human history.
Mm-hmm.
All the inspiring stories from World War II or from 9/11, right? Yeah. It's not just, it's an interesting period of time with all this rich history. It's the worst case scenario.
Right.
And the world is in chaos, or your world is in chaos. It might be individual, it might be a whole community. And it is no coincidence. It's absolutely because we are in a dark time that we are afforded an opportunity to do a couple things. One, to get down on our knees and to rely on Him who is omnipotent and all of this. And two, to be a brother or a sister, to be Christ's hands and feet in a way that we don't always have that opportunity. I think about, you talk about your grief with your brother. And I think during normal times, one of the best ways to reach out to someone is when they're experiencing grief.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to know the right things to say. You don't have to have a plan. You just be. You just go to them and you are with them. And that is the kind of being, how we are as human beings, the best part of us, that ennobles other people and it helps other people. So some of these stories are like really happy stories and fun, and some of them are just based out of absolute tragedy. And watch what these people in the middle of their tragedy are doing.
Mm.
One of the most powerful stories has nothing to do with COVID. It has to do with a young man, well, young, I don't know, he's about 50. And he's youth minister. He's been a youth minister all his life. And 3 years ago, he just got stopped in his tracks and discovered he had ALS. And his body is deteriorating. There's no cure. The disease is taking over. And what is he doing with that? Well, he had to stop working. He's in a wheelchair. He's immobile. He has this eye gaze computer where he can communicate through that. He has almost everything taken away from him. And this isn't some short-term thing waiting for a vaccine. This is his life unfolding before him. And what is Mark and what is his wife, Jan, what are they doing? They're uplifting others. He continues to blog, to evangelize, to share his story.
Wow.
Talk about how through his suffering, he's able to reach people. It's probably one of the most powerful stories that I was able to take. And even the interviewing was difficult. Even the interviewing was a sacrifice because it takes weeks for him to write a response with his eyes.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my gosh, we're all suffering with, a broken economy and pandemic and political divisiveness and racial tension and you name it, right? Out there. And a lot of those things will come to come to pass. But then we have people in our lives around us whose chaos is not going away. It's just not, but from that comes their strength. It comes their strength. And so some of those stories were just amazing. There was a gentleman named John Klein, and he would visit his wife every single day. She can't live with him now. She's got Alzheimer's, so she's in a special Alzheimer's unit. And then all of a sudden he couldn't visit her anymore. And he was like, oh my gosh, what do I do?
Right. Yeah.
Cell phone, he's FaceTiming her, he's at his window, he's singing window. I mean, and this is their life. This is going to be their life till the end of their marriage. And but he wasn't ready to let that get in the way of his vows for better or for worse. He's like, here's the for worse. What am I doing with it? And what a joyful journey, like a joyful journey in marriage. So, I mean, some of these were like really tough stories. And as an interviewer, there were a lot of tears on these interviews as I was traveling that journey with them. And I just became so inspired. So, the pain creates an opportunity for leaning on God and leaning on your fellow man. And what an opportunity has been created.
Absolutely. And the opportunity to connect too, because you think of someone who's in pain, and if you've never experienced pain, they can say, well, you don't know, you don't know what I'm going through. And even someone who's experienced pain may not know what they're going through, but they know what it's like to go through painful times. They know what it's like to have no hope to ever move your body again, and know that it's all physically downhill from here. They know what it's like to never be able to touch your wife again. And so they may not know your particular pain, but they can say, but I know pain, and I know hurt. So tell me yours, and let me mourn with those who mourn.
Right.
And then show you, when we're done mourning, how to live the best life ever. So what are some more examples of people who have really been living their best life ever, despite some worst case scenarios?
There's so many, and they're so enjoyable. One of the most enjoyable interviews is about a gentleman named Brian Costello, and he lives here in the Chicago suburbs. And I can't remember what he does for work. He's a business person, but his avocation is music. He plays the bagpipes for the biggest Irish band around here called the Shannon Rovers. They're very famous. And so their group was slated to play at the Dublin St. Patrick's Day parade this year. And he was bringing his two sons and a bunch of family members and friends. And it was this big trip. And there were so many plans, and everything was ready to go, right? And it was just a couple days before they were set to leave that the parade was canceled. It was the zenith of his career.
Oh, so right, March.
Yeah, St. Patrick's Day. I think it was the 15th this year or something like that.
Oh.
He was so bummed. And so he describes himself, he's like pouting like a kid. He's sitting on the back of his house. It's St. Patrick's Day. He would have been in Ireland. This whole big thing. And his wife, Katie, comes out and says, get up and get your bagpipes out and play for your neighbors. Okay. And he plays a lot of the songs that they had practiced, and they were all ready to go for the parade. And he just happens to live in a neighborhood that borders a nature trail, the Prairie Path. And so people started, you can hear the bagpipes drone over the distance. People started gathering, and it was so joyful. It brought community at a time where people were feeling so isolated. So it just kind of went viral on social media. People were tuning in from all these different countries. They wanted to listen. People were driving an hour or two. And so due to popular demand, Brian just played every single night at sunset for 74 nights.
Wow.
Named Brian Costello Day at the last night. But it just became such a point of solidarity and joy for the community. So this is an example of an artist that's using his art. I've got a few artists highlighted in the book. I've got an artist that did drone photography on a silent Chicago. You've never seen Chicago silent. Empty and silent, but gorgeous, shining. I mean, he just captured it. Wow. And I have a couple young ladies that I've actually taught. They're both in high school now, and they wrote a beautiful song and created the music Better Together. And it was just about the solidarity of friendship during tough times. Yeah. And they made it, and they recorded it and shared it. And they're just these two sweet girls. It was so powerful, So art. Oh, another artist, a gentleman named Joe Malham, lives in Chicago. And he's an artist by trade. And his specialty is the ancient art of iconography. And
Cool.
he is an artist in residence at a church, and he found this old piece of oak in the garage, nicked, splintered, and he said, perfect in my canvas.
Yeah.
And he created this beautiful face of Christ called Christ the Healer.
Wow.
The eyes are, you gravitate toward his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is just to gaze into Christ, to listen to him, to be with him, to depend on him. Whether it's it's sickness, it's depression, it's anxiety. So he just created this beautiful, beautiful portrait. And then a friend of his created a prayer to go with it called Christ the Healer.
Wow.
Artists doing what they do best to lift up people.
And what a time where we have a minute to take a breath. Kind of like you said, at first it seemed like, oh, I'll get all my chores done, right? And then it lasted a little longer.
Yeah, he was funny. He's like, and what am I doing in this time? You know, he's like, I should do something. I should create something, you know. And it was, I wanted him to bring it and travel with it, but he said it's too fragile. These things get chipped.
Yeah.
But I have a picture of it. I have a copy of it. I just love it.
Wow.
Artwork. And then of course, people are doing things like they're using their gifts and talents.
Mm-hmm.
People are using doing ingenious things. So I've heard several stories of this, but there's a distillery near us. There's a farm, a very old family farm, and they grow corn and they also distill whiskey. And they decided very quickly to transform that distillery to create hand sanitizer. But it was difficult. They had to contact their local congressman and actually change some of the laws, the ordinances about how these things are created, because there's chemicals in here. It's complicated, but they got laws changed so that small distilleries could create hand sanitizer. But the amazing thing was their heart. They did this so that they could keep their employees. Their employees continue to get paid and to support their families. And then they made very little profit on purpose. They supplied the local hospital, the local, the county health department, and the local community for just a little more than cost. It was a real act, real sacrificial giving.
Wow.
The ladies at the plant created this Rosie the Riveter version of them.
Cute.
Just, I interviewed some veterans that made face shields, and a neighbor who is a full-time chemical engineer, and she came home every night after a long day's work. Sometimes she was working from home, a long day's work at home.
Yeah.
To go on and spend 3 to 5 hours every evening sewing masks for the community. And in collaboration with other people, either free of charge or just to pay for the supplies. Just very altruistic. Just like, I'm going to do this. There's a need. I want to help people. I can sew. I'm doing it. And the communities coming together. So, for example, when the whiskey distillery was working, well, they got a t-shirt shop to make those t-shirts for cost. And then when they sold the t-shirts, the proceeds went to the local food pantry. It's this synergy of people that are giving and giving and giving, and the community's feeling it. We had veterans making face masks. It was the same thing. and then they're delivering them, and they're not doing it, they're just doing it for cost. Don't even pay us. We're just, so this creative spirit of Americans is amazing, but it was done so selflessly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
what's it?
First responders that are, I interviewed 3 different nurses from 3 very different hospitals, all working with COVID patients. I mean, you could do a documentary just on that.
I have just barely heard some calls of nurses, especially at the beginning of this, when it was still so unknown, and just in tears at the people they couldn't see.
Yeah. So that was one of the sacrifices. They made a lot of, they are still making a lot of sacrifices. But one of the nurses is getting ready to retire. He's a male nurse, the most well-known nurse in our city. He's just an amazing man. The other 2 nurses are a little bit younger. One's in a city hospital, one's in a nice suburban hospital. All 3 very different hospitals, different experiences.
Wow.
But they haven't seen this many deaths.
Yeah.
They're experiencing a lot of deaths of their patients. So most people get through COVID without being hospitalized, of course, but the ones that are hospitalized and are intubated, they're in bad shape. They're having a rough time. So it's difficult to not be able to save your patients, right?
Yeah. Even I heard of
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I heard of I am really close to someone who's on a lot of the COVID calls for a particular hospital. And, there was one nurse who generally non-COVID situations is supposed to put the patient first, no matter what. But in COVID, you have to put yourself first, because the nurse rushed in to help as she normally would and didn't put her PPE on. And this was a really bad and aggressive case, and she died within the week. She contracted it and died within the week. And the nurse who was describing it was in tears, saying, we can't get COVID comfortable. We have to remain vigilant on this. And, their assessment was, it's not going away, at least not anytime soon, and we can't get comfortable. We have to.
Right.
And, we have to put the full PPE on. We have to fully protect ourselves. And because if we're not there to care for the patient, that's not going to help anyone either.
Right. I mean, it's been compared to soldiers going to battle, right? They're not just suited up. It's the mindset. It's the mindset of there's danger all around us, and you have to be so vigilant. And that's the mindset, of course, they have to have. And it's extremely stressful to be in that mindset all the time. Go home, they have personal sacrifices. They have to isolate. They have to isolate from lots of people they love and family members. So yeah, they are real heroes. They are real heroes.
Absolutely. You were talking earlier about people who have really dug into their creativity and use their gifts and talents during this time. I mean, obviously you've written this incredible book as part of your gifts and talent, but I know one of the talents you also have is poetry. And there's a poem, particularly in the book, that talks about these things. Would you be willing to read that to us on air?
Sure. I just, as a teacher, actually, we were challenged to write a poem, and I wrote this poem. But one of the things that I reflect on at the end of the book is, so we have these wonderful stories and we have these memories, but when it's over, where will we be as a community? Where will we be as a country? Where will we be as individuals? Will we have allowed this extraordinary moment in time to change us for the better? So I guess that's the reflection, and it's called I Wonder When It's Over. I wonder when it's over if we'll remember all the goodness, keep it in our hearts like treasures. Oh, if we only could. The simple meals shared slowly, the phone calls, Zooms only. I wonder when it's over if we'll stay this connected to our elders so respected and our children more protected, friends dearer than ever before. I wonder when it's over if we'll remember all the goodness. Spring daffodils in bloom, sweet bird songs through the gloom. I wonder when it's over if we'll remember all the kindness, the random acts of giving to keep each other living, the simple, joyful gestures to neighbors, even strangers. I wonder when it's over if we'll still take time to feel the sun on our shoulders, beauty in the eye of each beholder, have walks and talks, make art with children, sidewalk chalk, read and write, expressing what's in our hearts with quotes, books and poems and simple notes. I wonder when it's over if we'll take time to light a candle and say a prayer, words of faith and hope to share, acknowledging uncertainness and faith in God above, who will bless our hearts with strength and grace. I wonder when it's over if we'll know we have enough to sustain through foggy future, to connect through frightful darkness, to shine the light of goodness inside our fragile hearts. I wonder when it's over if the grace and wonder of this age will leave a forgotten footnote at the bottom of the page, or if we'll remember all the goodness, keep it in our hearts like treasures. Oh, if we only could. So that's my hope, of course, for all of us, is that we will remember how the light overcomes the darkness. It always does.
Yeah.
We will remember the goodness in humanity. We will remember a God who has walked with us and cares about us and is watching over us no matter what. And we will take these lessons and use them to sustain ourselves and our children and grandchildren in the future. They are the most important lessons of life.
Absolutely. Now, do you have any in the book or just recommendations on your own, how we can take these takeaways from these beautiful stories and make sure that they do stay with us, that it's not something that we, a time in history or a really nice story we read one time, but how can we make sure those stick?
Yeah. Well, they were lessons that I had to learn myself, actually, through this time. It was actually kind of a difficult time for me. Beginning, it wasn't, but I had some crazy circumstances in my own life, and I started succumbing to depression during this whole thing, while I was writing this. And I was like, oh my goodness, I have so much work to do, and I don't have the time and energy. And but I had it set on my heart to do this, so I was going to do it. And what I learned, every time I interviewed someone, I thought, oh my goodness, thank you for that. Thank you for showing me how in your pain and your chaos and the craziness going on in your life, you're rising above that. And thank you. So each one of these interviews was like a personal lesson for me. And I think lessons people have been learning, you mentioned connectedness. Obviously, that's huge. And we need to be connected. One of the first interviews was a young college student. named Michael Arundel, just this sweetheart of a young man. And he's talking to his elderly relative from home. And she's so worried to go grocery shopping. He's like, don't worry, don't worry. I'm coming home soon. I'm going to shop for you. And so anyways, he ended up shopping for her neighbors, and then setting up a network for, it started with 18 states. I don't know how many states it's at now. A network of young people shopping for seniors. But one of the lessons in that, it was great that they were getting their grocery shopping done for free. Okay, that's awesome.
Mm.
But it was beyond that. I thought the real lesson here is we're connecting with our neighbors.
Yeah.
Your neighbor. You know, it's like, well, who is my neighbor?
Yeah.
Well, these were people in their own community that they had not really known, but they were connecting with them, and then they were chatting on the doorstep.
Yeah.
And showing them that they cared. So it was the connecting with neighbors that we don't normally connect with, and with different age groups.
Yes.
Seniors don't have a lot of company and are kind of lonely.
Mm-hmm.
So reaching out, not just to our little circle of friends and our girlfriends and our family. Of course, we're reaching out to them. But are we reaching out to others? Are we reaching out to our neighbors? The connectedness piece is huge. And I think a lot of people learned, I need to call these people. I need to call my grandma. I need to check on that lady 2 doors down.
Mm-hmm. Is this story in the book with that network?
The Michael, yes. The shopping story, yes.
Uh-huh. Yeah, because, you know, I would think even past COVID, how wonderful would it be to be a part of this network, even if it was just once a month, that you volunteered to go shopping for an elderly person in your neighborhood. And like you said,
Yes.
Not just get their groceries. I mean, they could do that through a lot of services. But to get their groceries for free and to connect with them and just, you know, give them a smiling face and a good conversation that could make their week or their month.
Right. So Michael is a pre-med student, and so he's training to be a doctor. And one of the things that's very important to him is that people are able to rely on their doctor, to be able to confide in their doctor.
Wow.
And to be able to have hope. And so he is hoping to continue this way past COVID. And it's mostly college students, but there's lots of other volunteers. It's called Leave It to Us. And that information's in the book as well. So yeah, it's just amazing. Again, community stepped up and helped him. Somebody helped him create a Facebook page. Somebody helped him create a website. There's all kinds of cool things. So the connecting piece, who is my neighbor and how do I connect with my neighbor, whether it's family, friends, or complete strangers? It's a really important piece. I spoke about using your gifts and talents.
Yeah, and I love that because like you said, that's something that can last way past COVID and can be a lesson that we carry forth. Were there more experiences there, any particular or in general, that you feel like this is really changing people or could really change people? And maybe there's something that could be the catalyst, whether we, you know, say, oh, that happened and we changed for a little while, or this happened and it changed us from the inside out and we're going to continue being banding together, connecting with our neighbors, all these things that we've learned, the lessons in your book. And I can't wait to read it myself because it's just like so joy bringing and hope filled. To not just let it be another story. Is there something that you think would be the catalyst between another story and real true life change?
Well, I think so often we think, oh, if I did this, or maybe I could help in that way, or I kind of have a talent in this area, maybe I'll do something, and we dismiss it. I think most of us dismiss those things from our mind because we're just too busy, and we are too busy. We are too busy.
Yeah, we are.
But I think this moment in time has caught people's attention in a way that didn't before. And people are inspired to actually do something they wouldn't normally have done. So whether it's using your gifts and talents, or whether it's volunteering, or using your art, all of those things are things that we should be doing on a regular basis.
Yeah.
We're too busy. And so actually one of the things that I learned, I know I'm an English teacher, it's probably not a word, but being unhurried. I felt my whole body slowing down to the point where I felt like, oh my gosh, this feels great. I'm not going to 3 meetings tonight. I'm not doing homework for 2 hours. Everything slowed down. And I thought, oh my goodness, I am never going to back to that pace. Because when you're unhurried, you're more of who you're supposed to be.
That's right.
More of the wife and mother and grandma and teacher and colleague or whatever. And then I'm finding creative things I can do that I wasn't so rushed and frenzied before.
Yeah.
Becoming unhurried is something I want to continue. Another thing that I talked about in the book is a story called The Year of Wonder. I don't know about you, but I have never had so many people text me or put on social media, Reina, look at that rainbow, or there's baby birds on the nature trail right at this juncture. I mean, I've just never seen so much before. And I thought, wow, we are allowing ourselves to slow down. We are allowing ourselves to enjoy creation, allowing ourselves to just be in wonder like a child.
Yeah.
This is something I want to continue, and I hope people will continue this.
Absolutely.
I think it's being more human. So many ways to be more human we're learning. And
I heard a Catholic monk one time say, I think a Benedictine monk, say that worship is not just singing, it's truly being in awe. And when we're in awe, that is worship. And a lot of the times when we hear of, the disciples or different people meeting God or Jesus, or like the angel that comes down, we see that they fall down in worship. And I've often heard the monks say, like, it's not about they fell down singing, but they were in awe and reverence. And that's something that we're finding when nature is the only form of entertainment that we can have, right? That we find that awe and we worship God in the, wow, you created this, and wow, look at that rainbow. And your promises are new to me because I'm actually paying attention to them, that I slow down to hear that still quiet voice.
Right.
And then that revelation.
So actually, it's an unexpected gift to discover that we creation is such a gift. We such an enjoyment of it, but to recognize I'm not in charge of the world. I can't fix this. I have a level of ineptness. I have a level of weakness that I can't fix the situation, but I recognize who can.
Yeah.
I recognize the beauty in the world. I recognize the goodness in humanity. I recognize God acting through others. A lot of people have deepened, I believe, their faith. They might not have been able to go to church. They have deepened their faith in humanity, in God, and understanding who's really in control. It's clearly not us.
Absolutely. And I think about all the stories of people using their gifts and talents in this time where we're a little more unhurried, a little less hurried. And that we could take that time and remember, we can't control all this. We can't go out and fix the whole world, especially in circumstances like this. And we can do our art just for the sake of art, just for the sake of, our neighbors, like the bagpipes that ends up turning into neighbors and people driving for hours and people tuning in from all around the world. But to do it just for the sake of creation, I think that the Creator created us in his image, right? And so we are supposed to create. And of course, if we are not creating from our being, this God-inspired creators that we are going to be anxious and upset and depressed and apathetic and lethargic because we're not doing what we were created to do.
Yeah. And I had a couple stories later in the summer. I was personally pained by the divisiveness in our country.
Mm-hmm.
Really getting to me.
Me too.
And I thought, there's got to be something good out there. Lord, give me something good. And he did. And so there's a couple stories of this beautiful unification. One of them went viral. So you might have heard of Benjamin and Marcus. I'm not the only ones that have talked to Benjamin and Marcus, but Benjamin's, these two young men built cell phone towers together, got to be best friends. Ben's an ex-Marine. He's white. Marcus is black with long dreadlocks, and they're just best friends and they're brothers. They call each other brothers. He's my brother.
Yeah.
And when the racial tensions and the rioting broke out, Benjamin, who also suffers from PTSD, he just lost it. He said, this is not what I fought for. I don't know what's going on, but I can't believe this is my country. And who did he reach out to? Did he reach out to a fellow vet? No, he reached out to his brother, Marcus.
Yeah.
And so they shared how when things are hard, it doesn't stop focusing on what you don't have in common and start figuring out what you have in common with your neighbor. And so they set up these lawn chairs in their little neighborhood of Rochester, New York, and just put a little table out, got a six-pack, and they put a little piece of cardboard in the ground that said, black and white, have a beer and have a chat. And you would be surprised at how many people just stopped by, walked by, or rolled down their car windows and wanted to chat with them. And I said, well, what did they talk about? What did these strangers talk about? Because they went viral, celebrities started talking to him and stuff. And Benjamin said, well, they weren't talking about race relations. Nobody's going to, roll down their window and ask some, what do you think about this? He's like, they're just chatting. They're just like getting to know you, like on a human level. How are you? What do you do? Like, where are you from? And Marcus, who's really funny, was just saying, you just got to hug those neighbors. You just have to get to know them. Just get to know them. And it sounds so simplistic, but it's so real. It's so true.
Yeah.
Just stop spending all your energy on what you don't have in common and find out what you do have in common, because if you're human, you've got some things in common.
Absolutely.
They were just a breath of fresh air, absolute breath of fresh air.
That's incredible.
Stories about things going on in our country and how people are trying to.
And more people just need to be that example. I was so blessed. I actually grew up in Borneo, in the country of Brunei, overseas. And I went to an international school growing up, and we had people from, a lot of, it was a Muslim country. But we had Americans. My brother and I think were the only Americans. And then there was people from England. There was people from all over Europe, Southeast Asia, India, all over. And because it was an international school, the focus was really celebrating our differences, that we would celebrate, different music, different culture, you have a different religion, I have one, and that we can be very different and still human and very similar. But instead of, trying to fit the same mold. We celebrated, you're beautiful with your color of skin and your dress kind of fair, and I'm beautiful with this, and we really celebrated the differences. So when I moved to Orange County, California, and it was like, if you don't wear Converse, you can't sit at our lunch table. It was the the biggest culture shock I had ever experienced in my life.
Sure.
Because not only were differences not celebrated anymore, but you were ostracized for being anything but what this particular group did, looked like, adhered to, dressed like. And that, unfortunately, has been a lot of America, that you need to fit this exact mold to, rise up in career success. You need to fit this exact mold to do this. And I think more examples like those two guys who just sat down and had beers is, we don't need to fit a mold. Like, we're friends, we're completely different. And at the same time, we're humans who get along, and we can all do this in our country. And I think the more examples that we have of people who come from very different backgrounds and very different look and very different, and still are so the same and touch on this very heart-centered level, I believe that kind of a virus, a very positive, loving virus, can, like you said, go viral and spread to this whole world. And I do think that we need more stories like this book. We need more people like you highlighting the beautiful things that are happening in this world, because, what we focus on is what we get. And the words of our mouth speak life and death, our thoughts, what we believe. And if all we see is horrible news stories of people rioting, of all these horrible things that are happening, we start to believe that that's all humanity is, that's how humanity is. But truly, there are so many stories like these ones you pointed out in your wonderful book, that it's just so inspiring, so hope-giving in a time when we really need hope. When we can focus on these stories, we can allow this to be what spreads throughout our country and our world.
Thanks. I mean, news is important, and hope is embedded in reality. The reality is there is a lot of chaos out there, and there is a lot of pain and suffering and difficulty out there. And in that reality, in the midst of the messiness, is God, and is the best of humanity. And you just have to look for it. And when you recognize it, it helps your worldview. It helps your mindset. Because it's not, did you have a bad day? Oh, this bad thing happened. I had a bad day. Bad things happen every day. It's part of life.
Right.
Not the Garden of Eden anymore. So the reality is that life is difficult, and this particular year has more difficulty than most, maybe. And also, there's light shining through the darkness that is more powerful. So get connected to that light. You're going to be better off.
That's right. And so for everybody who's watching, I know that they're on the edge of their seat saying, how do I get this book? So how do we find you? How do we find this book? Tell us where to go, where to get more. Where are you? All over the internet?
Thank you. It just it just went on Amazon this weekend. So Worst Case Scenario, Best Life Ever, Stories of Hope and Healing from a World in Chaos. I know that's a mouthful. Or you just type in my name, Layla Groleau, Groleau, and it's up on Amazon now in Kindle form and in the book form. And the whole purpose of me writing and sharing these stories is to uplift others. So if you need some uplift, if you want to share some uplifting, real life, honest, true, authentic stories with others, here's a great way to start. And I also am doing some speaking, and we'll be doing some future retreats along with that. But I'm just happy to share the stories. They're not my stories. They're other people's amazing stories. And they're worth reading, and they're worth getting inspired. So
Absolutely. And where do we find you?
Listening.
For those who are saying, wow, a retreat and I want to see you speak, where can they find you?
I have a Facebook group. Worst case scenario, best life ever is my Facebook group. So once I get some of those things going, we have to wait till things are just a little bit safer.
Of course.
So yeah, I've got some great plans. I have a devotional that's in the works also. It's kind of based on just everyday stories and hope. So that stuff will be that'll be listed up on the Facebook as well. So.
And are you doing online speaking in the meantime?
That's a good question. I'm thinking about that.
Okay.
My first speaking engagement canceled because of COVID issues. So, yeah, I'm kind of trying to navigate through that.
Well, that's part of what your whole message is, right? The
Yeah.
things happen and we navigate through it.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Layla, so much for coming on the show. And to you out there watching, I really encourage you, go on that Facebook page, Worst Case Scenario, Best Life Ever, connect with all that Layla is doing. If you have an event, especially online right now, reach out to her. She can come and speak to your group, to your event. And you can get a hold of all the resources as they come out if you're part of that Facebook group. Make sure to go onto Amazon and order your copy of the book. And if you are uplifted from this time we've had here, I know you'll be uplifted by reading the book. So make sure to uplift her and leave a great review so that more people can read this book too. Thank you for watching. We appreciate seeing you come and watch every week. And until I see you again, may the Lord bless and keep you, cause his face to shine upon you, and nourish your soul.